Welcome to ADCO Aviation. On the 14th video, I discussed our XL's modified tail feathers and how they came in at only 120.8 ounces ready to paint. And we began to make and weld the control cable guides in place. Well, once again, I ran out of argon gas, so I thought I'd finish up my seat. Before I proceed with my design ideas, let's discuss the Sling style seat. I've heard many wanting to change from Leonard's design because they think it can't be comfortable. First off, I have not sat in my plane for 2 hours yet, but I have sat in Leonard's and Les's. They were super comfortable to me. I was reminded of the cargo seats the C-130 had, and I've spent hundreds of hours in those seats, even sat in them for 14 plus hours as we traveled from Little Rock to RAF Mildenhall in England. Of course, I was a whole lot younger and way lighter back then, but I digress. I believe I've only heard one builder say Leonard's design was uncomfortable. However, he also said he added some extra sag to gain more height, and I believe he said the front bar dug into his legs. My plan is to add a cushion, something like what I saw Denny or Les do. To me, this is the simplest modification without technically adding any weight, since the cushion could definitely be considered baggage, since it could easily be removed and not permanently part of the plane. On my first seat, I first cut all the 1-inch wide strips, stacked them together, and drilled all the holes at once. If I was going to do it all again, I'd drill only the perimeter, rivet the perimeters together, then drill and rivet the center crossed webbing. Speaking of the center crossed webbing, I used a method I saw Les do on his SR 71.5 and only riveted every other cross and drilled out a 1/4 inch on the others in order to save weight. I'm not sure how much weight I saved. It came in at 15 ounces. Leonard has always said the seat weighs a pound as per the plans, so maybe an ounce or so. While examining the already well-designed, extremely lightweight seat, I started counting the extra, unneeded weight within its design. Of course, if you know me, I have to reinvent the wheel. So let's discuss what I was thinking. The cross straps, the ones running horizontally, basic function is to keep the vertical strips from moving and splitting them apart, right? I started counting the times they overlapped the vertical strips. I came up with 140 1-inch by 1-inch square overlaps, as well as 112 rivets to hold them all together the way I did it. More if you build it to plans. So my little brain, when I should have been sleeping one night, was trying to figure out how I can eliminate the waste. And this is what I came up with. My first harebrained idea was to try and maintain the original lattice look and figure out how to cut or punch out 1-inch squares and then drill 1/4 inch holes where the rivets would have normally been. If that failed, my backup plan was to drill 1-inch holes instead of squares and 3/8 holes where the rivets would have been. I drew them both out in Photoshop like so. I really wanted to stay true to the original look Leonard designed. I thought about drilling 1-inch holes and cutting the corners with clippers, but I knew it'd be too much to try to cut out each hole, so I wanted to punch out the 1-inch square. I searched the web for a 1-inch punch and basically found nothing in the size of 1 inch, so I thought I might try to make my own. I took a piece of 1-inch square tubing, chucked it up in the lathe, with first a 1-inch drill bit in the tailstock. That wasn't quite big enough, so I tried a reamer we had laying around. Once I got it the way I wanted it to look, I tried it on some scrap aluminum. Here's what I ended up with. So now it was time to try it out on my newly acquired aluminum. I first marked out a 1-inch grid on the aluminum, then placed the aluminum on a small piece of landscape timber. Using the punch, I drove it into the end grain of the wood about 1/4 to 1/2 inch with a hammer. Then I removed the block and added a short piece of 1 1/4 inch square tubing. If I was to do it over again, I'd try to find or make something with a little tighter tolerances. but I'm still happy with the results. I then pushed the aluminum down with a 2x4 scrap where I cut a 1-inch slot in. I'd say I used about the same amount of aluminum material, and except for making the punch, I'd say it probably took less time to make than the original design. As you can see here, depending if I struggled to align the 1 1/4 inch square tubing, you can see it didn't take long for each hole. Try to keep everything in frame. I scribed first with a knife, then just snipped out the strips from the last hole I punched to the edge of the aluminum. Now I have a very uniformly laid out seat. I think if someone wanted to drill 1-inch holes, you could probably have the seat done in half the time as building an original. But obviously I didn't do this to save time. It was the weight savings I was after. So how did I do, you ask? Just how much weight does the 140 1-inch squares of overlap webbing weigh on the original design? I came up with 3.4 ounces. And then you count the weight of all the rivets. In fact, my newly built seat came in at only 10.2 ounces. That's close to a 40% reduction in weight. Just as strong, and in my opinion, easier, and looks neater too. I had also wondered about those that had a CNC machine. Virtually no time to build, and one could even modify the back to have their logo cut into it. Just something I thought of. If you want to try this, let me know. I can send you the file I made. I hope you've enjoyed this video and hopefully found some of the info helpful for your build. And if you're on the fence about starting a Legal Eagle build, hopefully I've shown you just how easy it can be. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, or Rumble channel. Thank you and be safe.